Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. Presented by Rogue Matter. We talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture with the rogues who create it every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook.com/Rogue Matter Podcasts. Download our podcast immediately following the live stream on all major podcasting apps. Go follow us on Spotify. Go follow us on Spreaker, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you name it, we're out there. Or you can search Rogue Wave, go to roguewavepodcast.com. It'll take you right to Apple Podcasts. We appreciate your support and encourage you to go ahead, even if you catch the live stream, to go ahead and download us and follow us. It always helps boost our numbers. Tonight, Mandalorian Chapter 10, Easter egg hunt and reaction to The Passenger. We give an ode to Alex Trebek, and we go all in on more Star Wars. There's a lot of Star Wars news happening. We'll spin the racks as well. I am your host, Michael Dolce, as always joined by my cohort in crime, Mr. Hassan Godwin, Lord of the live stream. How's that for an intro for you?
That'll do. That's well done.
No, that's what I like to hear. Hey, I want to give you a quick 10, 15 seconds. Why don't you promote your other podcast that you're on?
The other podcast is called Cinementals. Mm-hmm. It is a cinematic retrospective podcast with that it's hosted by Steve Ovecki,
friend of the show,
who has been on the show a couple.
And we'll
of
be
times.
Again. We're gonna bring him back on in December. We're gonna have him. He doesn't know this yet, but
he doesn't know. He doesn't. Yeah. He's not aware. All right. Yeah. Well, I'll inform him that he's going to be on. Myself and Latham Conger III, who's a filmmaker in his own right. And we just we critique movies. We have a guest on every week. The guest comes on with their favorite movie and their guilty pleasure movie.
Okay.
And we watch those movies, and sometimes we appreciate the experience, and then there's other times. But it comes out. They're cut into two parts because the podcast goes on for quite a while because we have like in-depth discussions. So they come out every week though.
What days? Do you know? Is it a set day?
I believe it's Friday. I believe the set day is Friday, but I believe the initial episode is a Friday, and then the supplemental material comes out during the week.
Very exciting. So Cinemental, Cinemental. Go check that out.
Nicely done.
Look at that. I can spell.
Yeah, it's a blast to do. It's a lot of fun.
It's funny you mentioned that though too, because before we dive into our Rogue Rage, my Halloween movie watching has kind of spilled over into November a little bit. I did finish The Gate.
You finished The Gate.
Just as creepy as I remember it.
Okay.
Even with a young Stephen Dorff.
Yeah.
When he's got the eyeball in the hand.
It's body horror, Body horror is always bad.
The little imps.
It's
right?
The Gate, man. It's okay. Fair enough.
I know. No.
I did
creepy.
watch.
The dog dying. The dog. Remember when the dog, passed? Oh, very
You're
creepy.
stuck on The Gate. No, I'll let you have The Gate. Like, go ahead and have The Gate. True.
No, I'm just saying. There's a lot of what for an '80s movie with '80s special effects, still holds up to me. Still holds up.
I watched Wolfman's Got Nards, the documentary for Monster Squad, and again the director claimed that the Monster Squad actually destroyed his career, but it has the film has taken a new life in the cult status that it's appreciated, and I found out that the kid who played Horace died in his 20s of pneumonia. That
when
was
did he
pretty.
Die?
In his 20s. I don't exactly know what
it
year.
Wasn't in 2020 because 2020 is just
no, but he was. I think he was 22. Right? Ironic, No, it wasn't recently. I don't know why it's funny, but yeah. So that was kind of a tough situation to watch. It was good to just to go over the go over the film, find out that the film has a following, find some of the actors, see them in the way they are today, and the fact that they're going on a short tour to tour the movie around and talk about it. It's good to see the director, who is still a little bitter about the film. He's a little embittered. He's mentioned it a couple of times that the film ruined his career. So that's tough to hear. It's not a pleasant experience, but like, well, I'm sorry about you, dude, but thanks for the movie. But, yeah, Fred Decker is the director.
Poor Fred.
And but look, he's still in Hollywood. He's still making his bones. So
he's on the street somewhere selling crack. So I mean, he's got to be.
Hopefully those are not the only two parameters that you can reach. You can either be a movie director or a crack dealer. But
no, that's it. It's in the union contract.
That's all there is.
It's in the union contract. Yeah,
that sucks.
Yeah,
that sucks.
Yeah. So
what chance do we have? What chance do we have?
That is what we are watching. We'll throw you guys some non-pulp culture related stuff, or within the sphere. Give you a little heads up about what's on our DVR these days, or what is on our streaming shows. I didn't even get into Social Dilemma. We'll talk about that one next week. All right.
Also, Also, Shane Black wrote Monster Squad.
Yes.
From Lethal Weapon fame and
Weapon.
Iron Man, not Die Hard, as we said last time, and we got roasted for it. So because we are.
Well, no, you know what? I can justify it though, because apparently the script for Lethal Weapon was, or something. There was something where he basically wrote a script that was supposed to be a Die Hard, and it didn't. It got turned into Lethal Weapon. So there you go.
Okay. Fair enough.
Something like that. There's some sort of you go in. It was like the inspiration or something like that.
I think there was supposed to be a Mad Bomber in Lethal Weapon, and it ended up being a Die Hard movie.
Something like that.
It became Die Hard 4. Also, what the problem is that Michael Kamen, who's the composer for Lethal Weapon, also composed music for Die Hard.
My man.
Yeah, and so that's always why I end up linking them. I always think of Michael Kamen and the music that links them together, but that's not the same thing. Please go on.
We do this every week. All the rage in the pop culture world. Call this segment Rogue Rage. Remembering Alex Trebek. Alex Trebek is obviously the famous host of Jeopardy. He unfortunately succumbed to stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and he did pass away at the age of 80. I mean, he's just an iconic pop culture figure. So we wanted to remember him. I think he was beloved across, all latitudes.
From what I understand, you can't really fathom how large Alex Trebek was.
Yeah.
You can't really. Jeopardy has been around. It's part of the zeitgeist. It's absolutely a centerpiece of pop culture. And Alex Trebek has been doing it since I was a kid, So I mean, it's monstrous. His influence is monstrous.
Yeah, and not only was his influence monstrous, or just his persona, him as a iconic figure, he spilled over into the stuff that we talk about. He made many famous cameos, and so in a way, I wanted to kind of pay tribute to some of what's that?
Like what? Cameos like?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what they are. I wanted to pay tribute to his, to how recognizable he was as a figure in the cameos that he made in several things that we, kind of loved as pop culture podcasters. He was in Cheers. He had one of the most memorable roles, which was when Cliff goes on to Cheers, and he loses. He basically, Cliff Clavin is like the resident know-it-all.
The know-it-all, yeah.
And so he eventually gets onto Jeopardy, and he's like, he's the Ken Jennings of Jeopardy. He basically just ratchets up the score. And then at the very end, they ask a question, and his answer, who are 3 people who've never been in my kitchen? And he obviously loses. And not only does he lose, but then in Cliff Clavin fashion, he's so far ahead of everyone. He bet it all and lost. So instead of being like the all-time greatest single game champion or something like that,
how is anybody supposed to answer that question though?
Well, but that's the thing. No, that was his answer. Who are 3 people who have never been in my kitchen? And I think the question was literally 3 people, and so he disputed the outcome of the results, which can happen. And he claims
things.
That's
a new thing. That's a new thing in our time.
Yeah,
that's another new thing
Alex
in our time.
Trebek goes into the bar. I remember this too. I remember watching this when I was like a teenager. He goes into the bar afterwards and he seemingly consoles Cliff. And he said, Cliff, I threatened to quit over you because I agree you were so unfairly. So, and Cliff says, well, no, we can't lose you as Jeopardy host. So I'll refrain from my disputes now. And he goes away, and George Wendt kind of looks at me. He's like, really? He goes, no, I just came here for a beer. Yeah. So iconic Alex Trebek.
Yeah. All right.
He was in White Men Can't Jump. He played, he usually plays himself on Jeopardy, and Rosie Perez made it to Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Moves that begin with the letter Q, Alex. Remember that? That was good stuff. Rosie Perez.
Vaguely. It's been so long since I've seen White Men Can't Jump, but
more
vaguely.
into our realm, The Simpsons. When Marge went $5,200 in the hole on Jeopardy, Alex Trebek voiced an animated version of himself to demand the money, because as everyone knows, you have to pay back your total when you go in the red on Jeopardy, which is not actually true, but for the purpose of The Simpsons, he was like, "Pay up, you owe us 52. You owe us 5,200."
That show would be bankrupting people more than making people rich. Okay,
did that make it? Oh, maybe that's the updated version.
And you go to debtor's prison as soon as the show is over. Like people, it's like it's your money or your life, basically, kind of situation.
Yeah, back to the outer rims of pop culture in our world. How I Met Your Mother. He hosted $1 Million Heads or Tails. I just said that because I love How I Met Your Mother, so that was one of my favorite shows, and that was a really funny spoof because he hosted it with his trademark professionalism. So even though it was literally just they flip a coin for $1 million, like that was the whole premise of the show. It was a great spoof show, and Trebek hosted it as if he was hosting Jeopardy. SNL, he was a guest for Will Ferrell's final episode. And he joined his longtime impersonator to bid a fond farewell to Celebrity Jeopardy. So, obviously the Celebrity Jeopardy sketch, the rapist
isn't that ironic that they die back to back? Like, Sean Connery and Alex Trebek died back to back.
And finally, the most relatable to what we do, and my favorite cameo, Jose Chung's From Outer Space, episode 302, I believe, or 303 from season 3 of X-Files. He didn't actually play himself on this episode, but people kept saying when they saw Men in Black, it was Jesse Ventura and someone that strangely looked like Alex Trebek in their vision of the Men in Black. So whenever they'd see an alien in this episode, the Men in Black would come and visit him, and Alex Trebek was the other Men in Black. And it was one of those like, hey, it's you. And Alex Trebek is, you didn't see us. And then he would go away. So that was my favorite cameo. So a great loss, obviously, in 2020. And we still got 2 more months to go. So,
hey, don't jinx us. I mean, we're jinxed as it is. You don't have to give 2020 any ideas. That's
what I'm saying. 2020 is also the year of new Star Wars content, because that's the only ththing that seems to be filming and the only thing that seems to be coming out. That's
the only thing that filmed before 2020 started.
I know. I know. You have the spillover from the Force Awakens, not the Force Awakens. Rise of Skywalker. That kind of spilled it. Started us off this year. The Mandalorian Boba Fett spin-off series reportedly starts filming. A new report from Deadline suggests that a Boba Fett miniseries begins filming next week after the character was teased in the premiere episode of Mandalorian Season 2. Tamura Morrison was shown spying on Djarin and Baby Yoda. Obviously, the insinuation there was the actor has returned to play the iconic character after playing his father, Jango Fett, in Attack of the Clones. Deadline revealed Lucasfilm begins filming next week before the 3rd season of Mandalorian starts. Production between the end of November and the beginning of December. Boba Fett's solo cinematic adventures have long been discussed, with Josh Trank and James Mangold attached to direct before it was canceled in the wake of Solo's disappointing reception. So what do you make of this Boba Fett news? Are you excited to see how it ties in the Mandalorian?
No, I'm not excited to see anything.
I'm not either.
I'm interested, but I'm not excited. I don't get excited to see anything I hear about, but I'm interested to see it. I'll watch it. If it's really good, I'll like it. There's a potential that it's not good, because here's the thing.
Yeah.
Boba Fett, as per the films, has a particular size, shape, swagger,
Mm-hmm.
From what we were able to see in episode 9, not everybody looks good in that armor, because Tim Oliphant just did not look good. Now that was
chapter 9. Let's they'll kill you because episode 9 is the Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, chapter 9. Go ahead. I'm looking out for you.
Anyway, so he just doesn't look good, and so Tamora is much larger than Jeremy Bulloch, because Django was a much more broad figure than Boba Fett was. Boba Fett is much more it's almost lanky. He's almost lanky, and that's what made him so interesting, because his armor was more of a character than his presence in the armor. So I don't know how good Tamora is going to look in that armor, and if he's going to be able to pull off the Jeremy Bulloch Boba Fett that Jeremy Bulloch pulled off. We'll see. I mean, look, that wouldn't be my only apprehension towards it. The Star Wars television has been pretty good. So, I mean, there's no reason
I'm just wondering, and let me throw this out to you, because, like, doesn't it in a way dilute all the effort you put into making the Mandalorian not Boba Fett? Like, when we saw the Mandalorian promos, this is going back a couple of years ago, we're like, oh, isn't that Boba Fett? Oh, I guess they're just trying to ape off a boat. Like, I know.
Well, I mean, like, people who are like into the lore know there's a lot of Mandalorians now. Yeah. So it's like a stormtrooper in particular. It's not. So I mean, Boba Fett is Boba Fett in and of himself, and he's got his own. He's got his own, prestige and stuff like that. But they've done enough with the Mandalorian armor where if there's a threat of diluting Boba Fett by having Boba Fett in the same series,
or diluting Mandalorian.
If there's a threat of doing that, they've already done it. So why not?
Yeah.
I mean, if you watch the animated series, the Mandalorians are all over it. There's tons of Mandalorians in it. So, and they have Sabine Wren, who is a female Mandalorian in pink Mandalorian armor, which everybody thought was going to ruin everything, and for some reason, it became acceptable. Fans accepted it, so it was done.
I'm saying, pink works as an armor color. It actually does. I'm not being facetious. I legitimately am telling you.
Pink I just don't know where we are now. I mean, we weren't even discussing Voltron, but okay.
No, I know, but I'm saying pink works as an armor.
I'm not talking about pink armor. I'm not singing the praises or negating the.
You're one of those that thought it was going to be the end of everything.
No, I'm.
Real quick, do you think?
I'm talking to you. I swear to God.
Do you think it's a better move? This is kind of like put yourself in the shoes of the writer / director. Would you put him? Would it be like a prequel miniseries to kind of show you how he gets out of the Sarlacc pit, or would you save that story for the Mandalorian?
Is it really interesting how he got out? I don't know.
Like I feel like it's one of those things that it's the elephant in the room question.
I wouldn't do a Boba Fett series, so I don't know where I would start. I've never even developed my head to thinking about like the nuances of it, because Boba Fett is very much like the Nameless Stranger. Right. If you do an origin of Clint Eastwood's Nameless Stranger, you ruin the whole character.
Yeah.
So there's a very good. Now look, I'm not saying that they're going to ruin it. It's going to suck, and everything's going to be bad, and then you cancel it. Now, I'm not saying any of that. Yeah. I'm interested. I'll watch it. Hopefully they'll do a good job. But when it comes to speculating, I'd rather not, because I have no idea. I would rather they didn't do it.
Yeah.
Just to keep him as he is. I'm glad he got out of the sand vagina. But ultimately, that's all I needed to know after that.
I'm good either way.
That he gets out. He's out. And he's wreaking havoc in the galaxy. That's fine, and then we can move on. I don't need to know
we'll
anything
see.
else
We'll see what that miniseries ends up covering, what grounds it covers. I think there's a merit to having that story be told within the confines of its own miniseries, because I think then it gives not to be justification for anything, but it gives justification for it.
I'll take a grace moment to praise, to sing praise of for a second, and it's unorthodox. I'll take a grace moment to sing praise to George Lucas for his decision of making Boba Fett a clone of Jango Fett, because one of the big mysteries in the original Star Wars series is, what does Boba Fett look like? What does he look like under that mask? You know, and we got an unmasking of Darth Vader, but we never found out who Boba Fett was because he got swallowed by a sand vagina. So if you're going to go back to the beginning and you're going to do a prequel, you're going to add the guy's father in, and you're going to add the main character in as a child. Right? That's one way of doing it. But by saying, okay, he's a clone of this guy, so if you look at this guy, you'll know exactly what this other guy looks like 30 years from now, you know? And I was like, wow, that kind of solved that, right? And then also the clone troopers. Yeah. Like, who are the stormtroopers? Now, basically, yes, by the time we get to the original series, most of the stormtroopers have been conscripted normal citizens and they're no longer clones. But it gives you you're wondering what some of those stormtroopers look like under the mask, you know. It's we've seen him with it. So I think it was very clever, a clever way of of killing that bird with killing multiple birds with that one stone. So I agree. That's what I
agree. Speaking of Solo, because again we mentioned Boba Fett was canceled because of the reception to Solo. Ron Howard tells Lights Camera Barstool that growing fan support for Solo bodes well for future. The podcast asked Howard if there were any rumblings with Disney Plus and Solo, and while the filmmaker said nothing was in development, he seemed quite optimistic about the potential and future. No rumblings, this is his direct quote, though, and this is not a spoiler or anything.
I just bought this.
Oh, look at you go. Oh, yeah. And it's for anybody listening to us in the podcast, he bought the, was it the concept art?
It's the making of Solo.
Interesting.
Because there's very little supplemental before you get into whatever you're going to say. There's very little supplemental material on Solo. They have a couple of deleted scenes. They have a couple of they showed how they did L3, right?
Yeah.
Phoebe Waller-Bridge in a green suit to do L3, and that was about it. And it's a Star Wars movie, and there used to be hours of documentary stuff on it, and there's very little. So I ended up buying the book just to read about it. So I'm sorry. Please continue.
It's okay. This is not a spoiler or anything, but I think there is interest in those characters. It's good. It piggybacks right with what you're saying, though. I think there's interest in the gangster world somewhere down the line. I can assure you there's nothing being developed right now for a movie or Disney Plus, but one great thing is there's been a lot of affection shown for Solo, and so, of course, that keeps boding well for them to eventually turn it around.
That is the first positive possibility comment I've heard from anybody involved in the production of the original movie.
Yeah.
That, that's the first time I've heard anybody say something like there's a possibility of something, or that, that the tide is turning. Because usually what a couple of articles I read about it, I always find it's like, there's no hope for a sequel. Nobody's making a sequel. Nobody's interested in the sequel. It didn't make any money. We're moving on. Everybody moved on. So even Aaron Eisenberg, Aaron, what's his name? Aaron, oh man. See, now we're getting destroyed. We're getting wrecked. We are getting wrecked in the,
the lead actor, is that who you're trying to?
Yeah.
Alden Ehrenreich?
I called him Aaron Eisenberg from Deep Space Nine. Alden Ehrenreich. I got him. All right, so there goes my geek bona fides. But anyway,
well, that just shows you how forgettable Solo was.
No,
how difficult it is to say his name.
You want to know what's funny is that Solo is the go-to movie that I go, when I go to streaming and I want something on in the background and I just want to watch. It's a fun little action adventure story in the setting of the original Star Wars aesthetics. The original Star Wars motif, the kind of the World War II, World War I aesthetic. And, with giant mechs and, armored troopers running around, it's really kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've watched that. Actually, my favorite Disney Star Wars movie was Rogue One. This one, might be edging it out because I've watched this even more than I've watched Rogue One.
When I first saw, so a couple thoughts. One, when I first saw Anchorman, I wasn't that impressed with it. I was like, why? I don't understand it. But it became one of those movies you just keep watching over and over again. It's so easy to do it. And you just start quoting lines from it and you just start remembering things. Like the more and more I remember Solo, the more like a palatable, pleasing experience it was. And I enjoyed it in the theater. I wasn't overwhelmed by it, but it's one of those things where it's just so easy on the brain and the palate to just enjoy that it becomes better than it was. When watching it,
I did get a little bit caught up in the, wow, that's kind of convenient. Okay, this is he meets Chewie and Lando and the Millennium Falcon all in the same week. Like, is that what you're telling me? And then they do the Kessel Run 5 minutes later. But that became much, much less of an issue at the, the more I watched it, the more I kind of got into it. And it's just it's just an adventure.
Right. And I was reading recently the history of the monorail episode of The Simpsons, right? And I'll show you how this connects, right? Mike Reiss, who was, I guess, the executive producer at the time, was basically saying that he read all these reviews when it came out about how that episode and season 4 itself, The Simpsons are done. They've taken it too far. They've jumped the shark. They've destroyed The Simpsons. The Simpsons, blah, blah, blah. The exact quote was, he read in, he's like, yeah, I read in Entertainment Weekly how we destroyed, The Simpsons that year. And then 20 years later, they hailed that episode as like the greatest episode of The Simpsons, or that season as the greatest season of The Simpsons. So he's like, it's like, great. I finally get all the admiration that I thought it deserved, but way after, too long after that I can't actually enjoy it. So
I think the takeaway from that and so many other things as we've covered on this show is that the only way to go is just to believe in what you're doing, regardless of what anybody else says. And hopefully if you believe in it and you're putting your all into it, whatever it is, hopefully if it's not kiddie porn or something terrible, if it's not murdering, don't put your all into murdering. But I mean, but if you believe in what you're doing, you put your all into it, regardless of what anybody says, eventually it's going to be appreciated for what you appreciate it for. Eventually in time, people will see what you saw in it and appreciate you for being a pioneer. Yes. But if you get all caught up in what everyone's saying right now, and then you start getting wishy-washy, you start changing your product and watering things down, or you walk away from it altogether because it didn't get the appreciation that you thought it should, then you're never going to get that chance. You're never going to find out whether you were right or not. So that story, that Simpsons story, is basically is a hallmark of that.
And that's exactly right. And that's the way they look at it. All right, when we come back, something that is, who would have thought? Mandalorian, controversy, Baby Yoda, everything. We are going to give you our reaction to Chapter 10, and we're going to go Easter egg hunting, pun sort of intended, when we come back.
Welcome to Button Stash, the show about the best mustaches in gaming.
Casey, it's Button Smash. It's the new gaming podcast from the Rogue Matter Network. I don't know where you got mustaches from.
Well, I'm not shaving. But we will talk about gaming news, reviews, inside scoops, and retrospectives.
Join us live on twitch.tv/WeAreRogueMatter on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, or download our episodes wherever you listen to your podcast.
But please, Casey, shave.
Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. You can go to roguematter.com, check out all the different podcasts we have. We actually have a video game podcast. You saw the commercial. It's for Button Smash. They're awesome. They're going to be on in a couple weeks. We got a lot more announcements coming. Join the movement. Go Rogue, roguematter.com. All right. We were talking about Boba Fett before. We talked about Mandalorian, and thank God, at least this is out, because it gives us something to talk about every single week, which, aside from that, you'd have to hear our stories of being in a band together or working at Wizard Magazine or something. We'd come up with something. Or me, like, barging in on Hassan's hotel room and claiming a bed at Wizard World Chicago in 2007, which is a funny story in and of itself. But we don't have to do that now. That's the beauty of this. We don't have to do that. We can talk.
My own single room, finally, after all that time.
If you'd have paid for it, I would never have
made
done
the
that.
mistake of mentioning that to Dolce, and that was it. And I was like, oh, so you've got room. And that was it.
What are we watching?
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't even that. I was watching something stupid. I was watching the History Channel, and you got in. You're like, you won't even know I'm here. And then 6 seconds later, you're like, are we watching this? Can we watch something else?
I didn't even remember it until you told me the story again. And I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds like something I would do. Look, if you would have paid for that room out of your own pocket.
Oh my God!
I would never have done that. But
no, yes, you would have.
Yes,
you would have.
Well, no, I would have given you half, but I didn't have to. You didn't pay for it. The company did. So.
I would have said no. like I said. Do
you know,
that night,
that was the first year I left.
You kicked the door in anyway.
That was the first year I had left Wizard, and I was still, Sire had just come out, so I was, promoting the book and going to those conventions. I still got free tables because of Wizard, which was great.
Yeah.
And
I remember it as though it was antagonistic, but there was no way you could have found your way to that room unless I told you where it was. Somewhere along the line, I must have been like, all right, here,
No, but I flew out there without knowing where I was going to stay.
Yes.
I legitimately remember that. I knew I would be able to drop all my stuff off at the show at the convention itself.
But you were winging it. It was like a wing and a prayer. You were mercenary.
Totally, yeah. Totally.
And then when you, I remember vividly when you found out I had a single, and you were like, "Oh, that's."
Well, I was prepared to sleep on floors. I was going to sleep
problem
on floors.
solved. And I don't think I had another bed. So you ended up. I think you did.
No, you did.
End up sleeping.
No, you had 2 beds.
Was there 2 beds?
Yeah, because somebody canceled. All right, we said we weren't going to talk about this, but it was a fun.
We did. No, we ended up talking about it. You stole the empty bed. Thanks.
Spoilers for anybody who hasn't watched Chapter 10, which is Episode 2 of Mandalorian Season 2. But we want to give a quick recap. Mando and Baby Yoda, they're on a series of side quests as they continue trying to take the child home. In the new episode, the duo make a new friend, known as the Frog Lady. It's really what she's called, and run into some trouble along the way. And ultimately, there are far too many cute moments, courtesy of Baby Yoda. Well, that's up for debate, right? But there are also quite a few Easter eggs. This is from ScreenRant.com and references to other corners of the Star Wars galaxy, which we'll get into in a minute. So there's a lot of different callbacks, a lot of different things to process. Real quick, what is your reaction to the episode? And feel free to talk about any part of the episode.
I think it was a good episode. I enjoyed it. I've decided to take it very slowly, because when watching season 1 week by week, I was not impressed too much, because I wasn't impressed with how short each episode was. And now I was impressed with I was impressed with the production, and I was impressed with Pedro Pascal. But I was just like, okay, well, yeah, that's not. I was, it just wasn't bad. It was like kind of X-Men 1, like it was good because it wasn't terrible,
Yeah.
But then when I watched it again, I watched it recently before season 2 started, and I ended up accidentally cycling through it because I wanted to watch one episode, and I just ended up watching all of them because they're very short, and there's only 8 of them, so it was easy to kind of spend half a day watching them. I enjoyed it immensely, tremendously better than the original time, with a lot of the weight and the pressure and the stigma off of it, and was just watching it for what it was and all the Easter eggs and stuff like that. So this season, I've decided, because I'm a little annoyed. You do get annoyed because you're only getting drips and drabs of it. You're getting, okay, now he's on this planet, now he's on that planet. Nothing, something happens. An action set piece does happen, but then it stops, and then we're gonna wait a week to watch. But eventually,
that's
all this
what
is
I actually felt too, though, right? Like it was one.
Wait 1 second. Eventually, it's all gonna be over, and then we're gonna have the whole series in and of itself. And so we're not even going to remember what it was like to have to wait week by week. So I'm just trying to take it at piece at a time, take it in as respectfully and evenly as possible, without being annoyed about the format or anything like that, not letting any of that other junk get in the way. So as you asked, I did enjoy it. I do want to know where it's all going, and let's get on with it. But I appreciate the way it's being delivered. I appreciate the way it's being done, and I enjoyed it. I like it.
Yeah, well, that's the funny part that I felt about it. I felt like it was the first Mandalorian episode where I was actually in suspense as to what was going to happen. When
because I mean that sequence with, especially at the cockpit, when they were in the cockpit and they were talking, like that was like, wow.
There was, I mean, it was legitimate, like, oh, like, and I kind of thought to myself, like, is the Frog Lady gonna make it? You know, the Mandalorian's gonna make it.
Yeah.
You kind of, you know, Baby Yoda.
Yeah,
you know, Baby Yoda's
that's a cash cow. They're not gonna kill the
cash
cow.
No. I mean, you know, absolutely. So I mean, there, to me, I had no fear of them making it, but I was kind of like, is the Frog Lady gonna make it? Not that I even care if she does, but this is the first time where I felt like they were actually in legit danger, and I didn't know how they were gonna get out.
In typical 1980s sci-fi, character, she would have died. She would have bought it easy, you know, and then Mando would have been responsible for her eggs as well as Baby Yoda, and he would have just. But then they would have been calling him Nanny, the Mandalorian. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. But yeah, it was kind of intense. I liked what I loved about that episode.
Mm-hmm.
I will be honest, when he's talking to the rebel pilots, the two alliance pilots, because it's not a rebellion anymore.
Yeah.
And the guy goes like, "Could you go to channel 2?" And then you see the X foils, open.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, now, and they couldn't have done that if those were TIE fighters.
Right.
You can very quietly, silently indicate exactly what's about to happen next because of the physical features of the X-wings.
Yeah.
And so I kind of enjoyed. I remember laughing out loud about that. I was like, oh boy, these guys aren't buying your spiel.
That's kind of a cool thing too, because that's one of the many little Easter egg kind of references we get to see. Is we get to finally see the X-wing. I don't think we saw X-wings in season 1, if I don't recall.
We did.
But
and Dave Filoni again was a pilot in season 1.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But we got this is the first time we see him in season 2. But it's always good to see that, because that really to me, like things like that, when you see these physical objects, really ties your brain to the rest of the Star Wars universe. Because a lot of times, and this is my only, I don't want to say it's a complaint of any Star Wars movie that tries to go outside the original trilogies or prequels or sequels, is that, to me, it could just be any universe. You know what I mean? Like, it could be any sci-fi universe. When you have things like the X-Wing,
space anywhere,
it anchors you back to what it reminds you. It's an anchor. It's like, oh.
But you got to be careful just not to do it too much.
Correct.
Because that's my criticism of the sequels, is that they didn't broaden the aesthetics enough. No, they didn't. So.
Agreed.
I mean, you do in Mandalorian, you do get the Razor Crest, you do get a bunch of other ships that you've never seen before, and then every now and then when they throw in an X-wing fighter, you're like, wow, okay, great,
Right, exactly, because then it differentiates it, but at the same time, it ties it together in a nice way. We got to see the cantina, which was great on Mos Eisley.
Enough, I don't disagree with you. I don't know what's going on. This conversation is really weird.
What are we watching?
Okay,
today?
Huh? Yeah.
What are we watching? You're not watching this, are you? Got to see
the canteen, the cantina
again, which was pretty cool. They had this guy down, Meet Dr. Mandible. Dr. Mandible, the massive ant-like creature, looks a lot like the species known as the Killick. It marks the first live-action appearance of the species. The creatures were first introduced in the novel Dark Nest. It's also pretty funny that Ant-Man director Peyton Reed directed this particular episode. That's what said.
The spiders, right? The
No. The guy.
Oh no!
What?
I missed it. I missed a trivia question. I'm getting roasted again.
The guy who the ant that was playing cards or playing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you didn't miss anything.
There's a lot of Easter eggs. There's a lot of like these little cute things that you'll miss.
There's a Galaxy's Edge Easter egg too. Which is the amusement park. If you haven't been there, you probably missed this one. Outside the cantina, Mando passes a WED 15 Treadwell droid roasting meat on a pod racer engine. When visiting Galaxy's Edge, you can visit an eatery called Ronto Roaster that purports to cook its meat the same way.
Okay, I've never been to Galaxy's Edge. So.
I know, no one's been anywhere this year.
Yeah, and the way things look, I'll never be there. So, I mean, there is that.
Pelly remarks that she's not some Rhodian, referring to the green-skinned species with large pupilless eyes, which have popped up throughout the franchise. A number of Rhodians worked as bounty hunters like Greedo. So that was my list of. There's more. You were
very snide, discriminatory way. She said, "I'm not a Rhodian," but okay, that's okay. Star Wars isn't politically correct.
She shoots first.
Okay. Well. Whatever. A lot of people, there's a lot of consternation about that character and I like her. You know,
I don't love her, but
there's a lot of people don't like her. But I mean, I was like, all right, and I like when he landed there in the previous episode, and he let the droids, because he's kind of getting over his droid phobia, so he let the droids mess with it, and whatever. I like when a series kind of anchor you with familiar faces, like you meet the familiar characters again and again. They need to give her a little more so she could do something other than just be, a pain in the ass, but it is what it is so far.
Yeah. Now, the biggest thing from this episode is obviously the elephant in the room, the controversy that has just overtaken the internet. People turning left and right. This is the cancel culture at work. Now, I'm not going to go that far. But meanwhile, before we get into it, Lucasfilm has already turned it into a toy. So mere days after the second episode of The Mandalorian season 2 premiered, Lucasfilm has already turned the installment's infamous eggs into a toy. Baby Yoda's admirers on the internet are torn on how to feel about this frankly disturbing eating habits. Some defend the little tyke as an alien who has already demonstrated his tendency to eat virtually anything, including spiders, in the scene right before the big spiders start to attack them, while others feel this is an inexcusable act from Baby Yoda. Regardless of how one feels about it, though, it might be safe to say that all will be forgiven when Baby Yoda does something cute in Chapter 11.
Yeah, most likely.
That
was pissing me off also, but what was pissing me off more was just how everybody kept taking their eyes off the tank. If you know that this kid has a tendency to put and you, as a parent, you can't take your eye off your kid, because as soon as you're not looking, he's going to do exactly what you told him not to do. Yeah. Right? So Mando's not a parent, so he doesn't really know. Great, granted, give him that. But he's like, hey, stop eating those. That's not going to work. Do you know what's really funny? Whole previous season, he kept telling him to stop messing with the controls of his, and then Baby Yoda's just, or the child is constantly doing what he's told not to do. So stop taking your eyes off of those precious eggs, because they made the entire reason they're there is so that she can save her species. I know. That's the whole reason she's on this ride.
It was very careless, to say the least. It was careless.
It was like, come on. And then what is she doing? How come she's taking her eye off of that thing? That's crazy. That drove me nuts.
I fell victim this episode, though, to the previously recap. Okay. In the previously, now usually I skip it because I've seen the episode before. I don't need the recap. But if you remember, and this goes back to the days of network television, like Buffy in particular, right? They would do a short montage of, this is what you missed and this is what you kind of need to know. And if
previously
they were
on, whatever.
On, right? And if you needed to, if there was a key element that maybe hasn't been addressed in many episodes, if it was in the previously, X-Files would do this too, right? You'd be like, oh, you would get it. You would get a heads up.
Yeah, you focus. This is what they want you to focus on this particular episode.
That you need to be aware that this thing that happened last season is going to come into play here, and it had a scene of Baby Yoda using the Force, or something. It was something to the point where this was a special child and could do something very special, which we all know that he can. And so when he eats the egg the first time, I wasn't grossed out at all by it. I'm like, well, they wouldn't just have him eating eggs for no reason. Like, this is good. This is when they're cornered in the cockpit. This is what's going to happen. He's going to somehow do something. I don't know what. He's going to use some sort of special force power because he ate these eggs. Now they're inside him. Maybe he's going to burp them out. They're going to become these things, and they're going to be able to. I had this whole thing.
Wow. All right. Okay.
Turns out
nothing.
Just eating the damn eggs.
Yes, he's just chowing down on the last line of that entire species, which is very hard for me to get over. I was having a hard time with that. Like, oh my God, like someone grab the kid. Yeah. Someone get the kid to stop. He should not be doing this. Yeah. This is not cool. This is not cool.
What did you guys think? Tell us your thoughts. Give us your reaction. Are you going to buy the toy? I might still buy the toy. Actually, it's kind of cute looking. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. When we come back, we go spinning the racks. Previously on Rogue Wave. With a cape. No, anything. Yeah. No, cape is always crazy. Cape is always crazy. Look, there are clowns walking the streets right now.
Right now.
There is no one dressed in a cape. Rogue Wave Podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. Streaming every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook.com/Rogue Wave Podcast and available immediately following the live stream wherever major podcasts can be found. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave Podcast, frequency for all things pop culture, talking comics, movies, TV, and pop culture. This is the segment where we get to geek out on all the stuff that's kind of happening within the comic book universe, give you the preview of all the stuff that's going to make it onto the big and small screen alike. We call this segment Spinning the Racks.
Spin the rack, spin that rack.
I feel like I have to give that intro every time just so I can set up the song, Hassan. Just so we can. Last week we went right into Spin the Racks and didn't give the proper setup. So I feel like some people didn't know it was coming. This way, at least they know it's coming and can fully immerse themselves in your singing voice.
Yeah,
which is your contribution to the show.
Whatever.
All right, we're gonna do a quick spin around the comic book racks, stuff that's going on. Valiant announces a new Savage series from Max Bemis and Nathan Stockman. Max Bemis is the frontman for indie rock group Say Anything, and he's also writing Moon Knight. So look at this guy, multi-talented.
Based on a John Cusack movie.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
That's the one with the boombox, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Is that also $2?
No, you're thinking of Better Off Dead.
Better Off Dead. See, I know. I always get those two confused. With art by Nathan Stockman on the Iceman series. It's kind of cool. The cover says like from award-winning writer and it says from energetic artist. It's like award-winning writer Max Bemis, energetic artist Nathan Stockman. So that's actually pretty funny. Marcus Toe, friend of the show, Christian Ward, and Stacey Lee also provide variant covers. Since its return in 2012, Valiant has retooled and reworked its classic stable of characters to critical and commercial success. So Exo Manowar, Shadow Man, Harbinger, Bloodshot even got its own movie. Valiant has also created and developed new characters and titles such as Punk Mambo and the award-winning Divinity series. And now it will introduce readers to Kevin Savage. Savage is spelled Sauvage, now better known as Savage. It's a story of a young man who grew up in a jungle island called Faraway, filled with dinosaurs before he finds himself transplanted to modern-day London. There he becomes a media sensation. His new life in London comes to a halt when dinosaurs invade the city, and it's up to Savage to stop them. Longtime Valiant fans may recognize him, though, sort of. Kind of looks a lot like Turok Dinosaur Hunter. The concept of which bears a resemblance, considering that both of them hunt dinosaurs, but that's where the similarity ends. This is according to Screen Rant. That's what I was. They
look alike, and they do the same. They do the one thing that made Turok special. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, don't understand why it's.
And then you don't know what makes that okay.
In an age where brand familiarity. Yeah. I don't know if I actually pronounce. I feel like I pronounced it like Barbara Walters would. Familiarity.
Yeah, familiarity
is like clung to. Like people are like, oh my God, we need to do things that people have heard of. Why would you rename something people have heard of? That had a video, like a very successful video game too.
Yes, it did. It was a big deal. It was a big deal comic book at Valiant when I was there. And then it was kind of an amazing thing when Acclaim bought Valiant and turned it into Acclaim Comics. They made one of the first things they did was make Turok into a video game that was huge. It blew up for Acclaim. Yeah. So a lot of kids know Turok mostly as a video game character and don't even know that he started out as a comic book. Yeah. And then Turok wasn't even an original Valiant character. He was one of the characters acquired before Valiant started, but I don't exactly remember from where. But Turok and Solar.
It was the same thing with Magnus. Magnus was
Magnus.
Yeah.
And I think Solar, Man of the Atom. I think those 3 characters were acquired from another entity that had that was defunct at the time. So they held it over and then turned them into modern day superhero characters for the Valiant universe.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where it came.
I'm
trying to look it up real quick, but I'm not gonna. I don't think it's gonna actually.
Yeah, it's kind of. We're not gonna find it by the time.
So here's you know what? Actually, in doing this, Turok is actually. I think maybe they lost the license to it, and that's why they're doing Savage.
That's like I said, they didn't originally own those.
Look at us.
So
look at us answering our own questions.
Yeah, but we still don't know.
No, because Turok, I think, is coming back from Dynamite. So go figure.
Yeah, but we still don't know who owned it originally.
No, we don't know.
That's the problem.
Yeah. No. Well, chime in on the Facebook feed. We won't acknowledge
something out with that.
And finally, comics on Kickstarter have their biggest year ever with 22 million in 2020. This surpasses the record set in 2019. Despite the plague, this is from Comics Beat. Comic projects on Kickstarter had their biggest year in 2020 with 22 million in pledges, and there are still 2 months to go. According to a post on the Kickstarter blog by Oriana Leckert, this surpassed last year's record 16.9 million, and the success rate is also sky high. It's also noteworthy how many top-name comics creators have joined the platform this year, as everyone tries to find new publishing models. All in all, the numbers seem very solid. Something of note is that Boom, making 1.45 million for their Keanu Reeves comic book, is by far the leader. And Comics Beat kind of commented saying, "I can see why they came under so much scrutiny, but clearly did not drain the money from all other campaigns as they would be accused of doing."
I'm pretty sure that a big proponent of that was the fact that no one got a convention season this year.
Yeah.
So people, that's a huge model for selling and deal making, wheeling and dealing for most of the independent aspects of the industry.
Yep.
So without that, and Kickstarter was probably a godsend for most of those people.
Yeah, and speaking of Kickstarter, Time Trader successfully was funded through Rogue Matter on Kickstarter. That was our first Kickstarter book. That'll be coming out in February. But I wanted to let you know about a new book coming out soon. We just launched the landing page for it. The book is called The Court, and it's an illustrated novel about a young man learning about life through basketball. It's got some great art inside and an awesome story. I'm a big basketball fan, so this is right up my alley. You can head over and check it out on the Rogue Matter Kickstarter page. Look up The Court, an illustrated novel. You can be notified about the book before it launches, before the actual campaign launches, which will be happening in the coming weeks. All right, that's our show for tonight. In next week, we're not just making stuff up now. We've got stuff. We've got Chapter 11. We are also going to welcome an actress from The Wolf of Snow Hollow. She's going to talk about that, which is a brand new horror film that is coming out in 2020, and she's also part of a Zoom show. Like, that's what we have now. We have Zoom shows, which is pretty cool for some other projects. So we're going to welcome her as well too, and we'll also talk more about Baby Yoda and his strange eating habits. We will see you guys next week.
Rogue Wave.